Success does not begin with tools, opportunities, or environment. It begins with mindset. You may hold a prestigious degree, a stable job, or come from a favorable background, but if your mindset does not change, your life will remain stuck in place. This is the starting point that creates the difference between the majority and the 1% at the top. What sets the elite apart is not that they think better, but that they think differently. They are not necessarily more intelligent than others, nor do they work themselves to exhaustion. The real difference lies in how they see problems, how they ask questions, how they act when no one is watching. While the majority merely repeats what they have been taught, they choose to question. While the majority chases recognition from others, they focus on what pushes them forward. Mindset is like a compass. If it is misaligned, you could row your boat tirelessly for a lifetime and still never reach the shore. But if it points in the right direction, every stroke of the oar matters, no matter how small, pulling you closer to your destination. That is why every sustainable change must begin in your mind, not from the outside. Those at the top are not swept away by the standards society has set. They do not accept the usual advice. Go to school, find a safe job, work hard for decades, save a little, and wait until retirement to live a stable life. That formula, worshipped by the majority, is exactly what binds them within limits. The 1%, in contrast, do not see stability as the final goal. They understand that clinging to a single income stream, a single position, a single safety ticket is the greatest risk of all. They build independent thinking so that no circumstance can easily make them collapse. Another difference lies in the way they ask blunt questions. Does this way of thinking truly lead me to the life I want? If the answer is no, they change immediately. The majority believe that hard work is the key to progress. Yet in reality, many who work themselves to exhaustion remain in poverty. Diligence without strategy only creates another exhausting loop. The 1%, on the other hand, focus on effectiveness. They do not chase doing more, they focus on doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. Their different starting point is awareness. They realize that waiting for opportunity is the behavior of the passive. Opportunity does not come on its own. It only appears when you are ready to seize it. That is why they do not sit and wait. They create opportunity. They arm themselves with knowledge, skills, and relationships so they are prepared to leap in when the spark appears. They do not need the perfect timing. As long as there is a strong enough reason, they go all in. Their perspective on money is also different. The majority are taught that money is the root of evil, that people with wealth are surely greedy and selfish. But the 1% know clearly, money is only a tool. A good person with wealth multiplies value many times over. A wise person with wealth creates positive influence. They do not feel guilty for wanting more. On the contrary, they see money as the key that unlocks freedom, time, and choice. Look at their lifestyle habits. The majority are taught to be humble, stay unnoticed, follow the crowd to be safe. But the 1% know that following the crowd only gives you the same results as the crowd, and most of the crowd never reach what they desire. Therefore, they dare to step out of line, not with arrogance, but with a clear purpose. They accept being different, even facing opposing opinions, as long as they stay true to their chosen direction. This mindset is also reflected in how they face failure. Ordinary people see failure as shame, as an ending. The 1% see in failure a teacher. They learn from mistakes, analyze causes, adjust, and keep moving. They do not measure their worth by how many times they fall, but by how quickly they rise again. They do not fear failure. They only fear missing the lesson failure brings. Another crucial point, they understand that knowledge only has value when put into action. Reading hundreds of books, attending dozens of courses, without application, all is useless information. The real power lies in knowledge deployed. They turn each lesson into a result, each experience into progress. They also see time differently. Ordinary people waste it as if they have endless reserves, while the 1% treat time as the scarcest resource. Money lost can be earned back, but a day gone will never return. Therefore, they protect their time from invisible thieves, social media, useless news, draining relationships. Each day they ask themselves, today, have I moved closer to the life I want? They also put emotions in the right place. Ordinary people act according to feelings. Tired, they rest. Afraid, they delay. Not in the mood, they quit. But the 1% do not let moods dictate their actions. They act by decision, not by fleeting emotions. That is why they are consistent, persistent, and reliable. And while they are grateful for what they already have, they never stop. Gratitude combined with aspiration is power. Gratitude that becomes complacency halts growth. Gratitude that coexists with a hunger to expand. That is how they unlock their full potential. The different starting point of the 1% is this. They do not only change behavior, they change mindset first. When you still hold on to the same old thinking, every new action is just a thin coat of paint. But when you rewire your mindset, every action is built on a solid foundation. The real question you need to ask yourself right now is my current mindset leading me to the life I want? If the answer is no, then take this moment as the beginning. Do not wait for luck. Do not lean on others. Change the starting point in your own mind, because mindset is what decides everything. From an early age, each of us grew up with reminders presented as absolute truths. Study hard, find a stable job, save consistently, and you will have a secure life. On the surface, it sounds reasonable, but look around and you will see many who followed this very path, yet still struggle, still feel anxious when thinking about the future. The problem does not lie in hard work or effort, but in the fact that those truths may no longer hold. Most of us believe that effort is the only key to rising up. Yet out there are people who work 12 or 14 hours a day and by the end of the month still worry over every expense. Sweat alone is not enough to buy freedom. The true difference lies in asking the right question. Is this job moving me forward or just keeping me in a loop? Those in the 1% do not cling to the comfort of being busy to console themselves. They care only about effectiveness and results. Society often praises safety, a stable position, a fixed income, a pre-drawn plan leading to retirement. But is that stability truly safety? When your entire life depends on one decision from a superior, one shift in the market, can you still be sure? The elite quickly realize that real safety lies in the ability to create value for themselves, to own assets and skills that no one can take away. We grow up believing that opportunity comes to those patient enough to wait. But think carefully. Has opportunity ever knocked on the door of someone unprepared? Ordinary people hope, while extraordinary people prepare. They study, train, and accumulate skills so that when the moment arrives, they can seize it instantly without waiting for the perfect time. Another common belief: money is the root of evil. The rich are labeled greedy and selfish. But the truth is, money is only a tool. In the hands of a kind person, it becomes a means to create positive impact. In the hands of the wise, it expands freedom, time, and choice. That is why the 1% feel no guilt in desiring more. They understand that the more they have, the greater their power to create good influence. Many also believe that following the crowd is the safest route. Stay quiet, blend in, avoid standing out to be accepted. But look at the results the crowd achieves. Most have still not reached the life they truly want. Those who truly break through dare to step out of line, not to prove themselves, but to stay loyal to their goals. You have likely heard that failure is shameful. In reality, no success exists without painful falls. The extraordinary see failure as a teacher. They do not let mistakes bury them. They dissect the causes, learn the lessons, and rise faster than before. Their worth is not measured by how many times they fall, but by how quickly they recover. Likewise, knowledge is often praised as power, but knowledge not applied is dead information. The 1% do not read books or attend courses merely to accumulate knowledge. They transform those lessons into concrete actions, into tangible results. It is implementation that creates real power. Many still believe that emotions should guide decisions. Tired, they stop. Afraid, they pause. Not in the mood, they quit. But if you only follow feelings, you will never go far. The extraordinary separate emotion from responsibility. They act based on discipline and commitment, even when their mood is unfavorable. That is why they maintain a persistence that the crowd often lacks. There is also one crucial point: gratitude. The majority think gratitude alone is enough, but the 1% combine gratitude with aspiration. They appreciate what they have, but never stop. For complacency is the trap that kills potential, while gratitude paired with ambition is the force that opens the next chapter. Now pause and ask yourself, how many of these beliefs are you still carrying? and how many of them are truly leading you toward the life you want? If the answer is not many, then this is the moment to begin changing. I want to challenge you with one thing right now. If you truly desire to break free from old beliefs, leave a small sign in the comments. Simply write, "I'm ready," or just the number 1. That will show you have dared to plant the seed of change right here, right now. For me, the one writing these lines, your presence and determination are the most precious reward. It lets me know I am not speaking into a void, but that I have you as a companion on this journey. I thank you, and I am grateful for your presence. The truth is, old beliefs that no longer serve you should not be kept. Be brave enough to question them, filter them, and keep only what helps you move forward. That is how you start a new journey, by changing the roots of your mindset. Because only when you think differently can you live differently. There is a paradox in life. Many people work tirelessly from dawn to late at night, yet their results hardly change. They take pride in their hard work, in the long hours spent, in the sacrifices they make for their job, but when they look back, their income has not increased, their quality of life has not improved, while their energy and time have been drained. Effort alone is never enough, because the problem does not lie in the number of hours worked, but in the value created by each hour. Those in the 1% understand this principle clearly. Effectiveness is the true measure, while blind effort is nothing but the path to exhaustion. If diligence is your only goal, you will easily fall into a dangerous loop, constantly busy, yet going nowhere. Each day is packed with tasks, but when you add up the months and years, the achievements are negligible. That is the sign of a lack of strategy. The elite do not let themselves get trapped in meaningless busyness. They do not ask, "How many hours did I work?" but rather, "What results did I create in each hour?" This is the difference in mindset. Instead of measuring by effort, they measure by impact. Blind effort often stems from the false belief that the harder you work, the more certain your success. But reality is full of counterexamples. People can spend their entire lives on one job and still never change their fate, because they put their effort in the wrong place. Effectiveness requires clarity to choose the right task, the right method, and the right time. That is why those who know how to manage their time and energy often achieve far more than those who simply stretch themselves to exhaustion. Observe how the 1% act. They do not throw themselves into every task that appears, nor do they rush to accept every offer. They ask, "Does this work bring me closer to my goal, or does it only scatter my energy?" If the answer is no, they cut it off immediately. That decisive choice allows them to focus on what generates the greatest impact, creating a clear difference over the long run. The most important point is that they distinguish between activity and progress. Being busy does not equal being effective. Sitting for hours at the computer does not equal creating value. Piling up tasks on a list does not equal success. What matters is whether you are moving closer to your goal. The elite always keep this question in mind. Am I moving forward or just running in circles? Blind effort also carries another cost. It takes away opportunity. When you pour all your time into meaningless work, you unintentionally lock the door on higher value choices. Every day spent in misdirected busyness is a day you lose the chance to invest in what truly moves you forward. The 1% understand this well, which is why they are unafraid to say no to what is unimportant, so they can channel energy into decisions that create turning points. Effectiveness demands a combination of strategic thinking and personal discipline. If you have strategy without action, your plans remain on paper. If you have action without strategy, your results are fragmented and weak. Those who achieve great success always balance both. They carefully calculate the direction, then act with consistency to maintain momentum. Picture someone rowing a boat. Blind effort is like rowing with all your strength, but in the wrong direction. No matter how hard you row, you only move farther from your goal. In contrast, with the right direction, even if your strokes are not powerful, you still gradually approach the destination. That is the strength of effectiveness. It allows you to achieve more with less effort, as long as you know exactly where you are going. The elite also understand that doing more is not always doing better. They value the 80-20th principle. 20% of the most important work generates 80% of the results. Instead of scattering their focus, they concentrate on the key levers. In business, it may be strategic clients. In careers, it may be core skills. In personal life, it may be habits that affect long-term health. By choosing the right fulcrum, They achieve outstanding results without exhausting themselves in scattered effort. The difference also lies in how they manage energy. Ordinary people only count time. The elite count both mental and physical strength. They know that 1 hour of highly focused work is more valuable than 10 hours in a state of fatigue and distraction. Therefore, they invest in protecting their health, their sleep, their focus. They treat energy as an asset to be managed, never letting it leak away into trivial annoyances. Blind effort often carries a misplaced pride. People like to boast about how busy they are, how they work to exhaustion, as if that proves their worth. But the truth is different. Exhaustion is not a medal. It is the sign of misdirection. The 1% do not boast about hours. They boast about results. And results are the only measure that matters. What makes effective thinking such a powerful weapon is that it creates sustainability. You can push yourself for a few months with blind effort, but sooner or later you will burn out. Effectiveness, on the other hand, allows you to go farther for longer because it optimizes every step. The elite do not sprint only to collapse. They know how to maintain endurance until the very end. The most important question you need to keep after all this is, do today's tasks, habits, and choices truly bring you closer to your goal or only leave you more drained than yesterday? When the answer is clear, you will realize that value does not lie in the amount of effort spent, but in the direction and the results that effort produces. Effectiveness never comes from luck. It is the result of intelligent selection, personal discipline, and the ability to focus on what truly matters. And that is exactly what makes the 1% different. They do not work more than others, they work smarter than others. Society always teaches you to seek stability. A long-term job, a steady paycheck, a life without major upheavals. On the surface, it sounds safe, but in reality, it is a thin shell covering dependency. One decision from a superior, an economic crisis, or even a small change in the organization can take away everything you thought was stable. This is not safety, but fragility disguised. Those in the 1% understand this paradox clearly. They do not tie their destiny to a single seat, a single income stream, or a single plan. They face the truth: dependency equals weakness. When your entire life hangs on a thread from one source, you have bound yourself to the greatest risk. Independent thinking is the path to escape that condition. Independent thinking begins with looking directly at the question, what in this life is truly under my control? Ordinary people choose avoidance. They place their trust in systems, in organizations, in things they believe will protect them. But the elite choose to act. They do not wait to be supported. They build the capacity to support themselves. Instead of depending on one source of income, they create multiple channels of value. Instead of relying on one job, they develop skills, knowledge, and relationships that allow them to stand firm anywhere. Independent thinking helps them realize that real safety does not lie in holding tightly to what they already have, but in the ability to regenerate whenever needed. Fragile stability is like standing on a suspension bridge. It may look steady, but one strong gust of wind can make it shake violently. In contrast, independent thinking is like knowing how to swim in the ocean. Even if there is no bridge, you can still keep yourself afloat and find your way forward. This does not mean they despise stability. On the contrary, they respect it, but they are not naive enough to believe stability is permanent. They always prepare alternatives, always train themselves to pivot when situations change. That is proactivity, not illusion. Independent thinking is also shown in how they view risk. The majority fear risk, avoid risk, treat it as a threat, but the 1% see risk as a natural part of growth. They do not ask, how can I avoid risk? They ask, how can I manage risk? Thanks to this, they dare to step into opportunities that others abandon out of fear. You can see this clearly in how they make decisions. Ordinary people ask, what if I fail? The elite ask, what if I don't try? What will I lose? A different question creates a different path. One side remains stuck in fear. The other advances with clarity and courage. Independent thinking is also the ability to resist pressure from the crowd. When everyone advises you to cling to safety, you need enough strength to ask, safe for whom and safe for how long? The crowd is easily guided by collective belief, but the collective is often wrong. Those who dare to think differently, who dare to choose their own path, are the ones who open directions no one has stepped on before. Independence in thinking also leads to independence in action. The 1% do not wait for recognition or permission from others. They grant themselves the right. They do not sit waiting for a door to open. They build their own door. This attitude frees them from passivity, turning them into creators instead of dependents. A clear example. While many people see stability as the final destination, the 1% see stability only as the starting point. They do not want to preserve the status quo. They want to expand. They know that if they stop at stability, that is already the beginning of decline. In a constantly changing world, the only thing truly sustainable is adaptability. Independent thinking not only protects you in times of turbulence, but also opens freedom. When you know you can create value anywhere, when you have multiple resources, multiple skills, multiple paths, you no longer live in fear of loss. You no longer have to cling to one thing to feel safe. That confidence is the foundation of inner freedom. It is important to note that independence does not mean isolation. The elite do not fight against the world. They still cooperate, still build relationships, but they never place their fate entirely in anyone's hands. They value connection, but keep the control of their life in their own. Finally, remember this. Stability may give you peace of mind in the short term, but it is so fragile that even a small disturbance can shatter it. Independent thinking is what allows you to build a truly solid foundation. When you master yourself, sharpen your skills, and dare to take your own path, you not only survive upheavals but also learn to use them to move further. That is why the 1% never bet their lives on stability. They choose independence. Because only independent thinking creates true safety, the safety that comes from within, unshaken by any external turmoil. One of the greatest illusions people often nurture is this: if they are patient long enough, luck will eventually smile on them. We grow up on fairy tales where opportunity suddenly knocks and turns the protagonist into a hero overnight. But real life does not work that way. Passive waiting has never created a different future. Those who rise to the top all share one thing in common. They do not wait for opportunity. They proactively create it. Average people often ask, when will opportunity come to me? The 1% instead ask, what do I need to prepare so that opportunity appears through my own hands? The difference lies in how they approach life. One side sits guessing their fate, while the other quietly builds the foundation so they can explode at any moment. Opportunity is not a gift from destiny. It is the result of preparation meeting action at the right time. Looking back, you will see that life's major turning points rarely happen by sheer luck. The person who gets the dream job is often the one who has been honing their skills beforehand. The one who catches the market at the right time is usually the one who has been researching and preparing for a long while. The one who turns an idea into a billion-dollar business does not succeed because someone randomly knocked on their door, but because they dared to experiment, dared to fail, and dared to rise again until they found the right way. Proactively creating opportunity does not mean reckless risk-taking without a plan. It requires strategic thinking and discipline. The 1% understand that the world is always full of opportunities, but only those who are prepared can recognize them. That is why they turn each day into a training ground. They sharpen skills, upgrade their mindset, expand their network, as if they are always preparing for an important competition. And when the golden moment arrives, they do not hesitate, because they are already in a state of readiness. Consider two people. One waits, believing that if lucky enough, someone will one day hand them an opportunity. The other spends every evening learning new skills, building confidence, broadening vision. When a door suddenly opens, the first person lacks the courage to step in, while the second advances naturally, as if the moment had been destined. In truth, it was not destiny, but the fruit of long preparation. Opportunities often come disguised as difficulties, a complex project, an unwanted assignment, a challenge that seems beyond ability. These are the fertile grounds where you can prove your capability. Those waiting for luck will avoid them, while proactive people seize them and turn them into leverage, because they know the fewer people who dare to step in, the greater the reward for those who do. The key point here is sharpness of thinking. Opportunity is not always obvious. Sometimes it is just a faint spark in the dark. The passive will pass it by because they cannot see the potential. The proactive will analyze, experiment, and turn something small into something great. This is the skill of seeing beyond the present, of spotting hidden value where others see only problems. Proactively creating opportunity also means not waiting for the perfect time. The ideal time never arrives. If you wait until all conditions are in place, you will wait a lifetime. The 1% understand that perfection comes only from continuous action and gradual refinement. They begin even when they are not fully ready, because they know each step brings lessons, and those very lessons open new doors. It must also be said that waiting for luck is a psychological trap. It gives you a false sense of safety, as if failure is not your fault, but fate's refusal to smile. But proactive people do not comfort themselves with that excuse. They look straight at reality. If I have not achieved what I want, it means I have not acted enough, not prepared enough, or not gone in the right direction. This honesty makes them stronger and less dependent on external forces. Proactive people also do not waste time comparing themselves with others. They know everyone has their own journey. Instead of envying someone else's success, they ask, what can I learn from how they did it? This question becomes motivation, becomes a roadmap for their own progress. This, too, is a way of creating opportunity, turning the success around you into inspiration and practical lessons. Finally, consider the nature of luck. Luck is essentially the intersection of opportunity and preparation. When you are unprepared, opportunity, even if it comes, means nothing. But when you are always in a state of readiness, you do not need to pray for luck. You create it yourself through your own ability. That is why the 1% rarely speak of chance. They speak of strategy, action, and persistence. This world does not lack opportunities. It only lacks people courageous and determined enough to turn them into reality. And that will never belong to those who sit and wait. It only comes to those who step out, who seek, who act, and above all, who know how to turn each step into the foundation for the next. Proactively creating opportunity is not the privilege of a few. It is a choice anyone can make. Each day you face dozens of small decisions. Read one more page or scroll through your phone, try a new task or continue avoiding, dare to ask a question or stay silent. These small decisions, when accumulated, are exactly how you create your own opportunities. Sitting and waiting for luck will keep you where you are. Proactively creating opportunity will pull you out of the comfort zone. And only outside the comfort zone will you find the path to true breakthrough. For centuries, people have passed down the saying, money is the root of all evil. That very prejudice has caused generations to grow up haunted by the belief that the desire for wealth is something shameful. People look at the rich with suspicion, associating them with greed and selfishness. But the truth is completely different. Money itself carries no morality. It is merely a tool. And the value of that tool depends on the hand that holds it. The 1% understand that, in the hands of a good person, money opens the ability to create even more good. In the hands of someone lacking wisdom, money becomes the means of amplifying mistakes. Money does not change a person's nature, it only exposes it. Therefore, instead of avoiding or condemning it, those who want to rise must change their perspective. See money as a tool to achieve freedom, not as chains that bind. The freedom money brings is, first of all, freedom of time. As long as you must trade every hour of labor for every unit of income, you are bound by your job. But when money is used wisely through investment, through creating recurring value, you begin to buy back your own time. That time allows you to learn, to create, to enjoy, and to grow. This is the difference between someone who works for money and someone who makes money work for them. Next, money brings freedom of choice. Those without money are often forced to accept unfavorable conditions, to stay in jobs they dislike, to live in environments they do not want. On the contrary, with financial resources, you have the right to say no, the right to choose where you live, the right to collaborate with the right people instead of enduring situations because you have no other option. The right to choose is the clearest sign of freedom. Money also creates security. Not the fragile kind of security built on a single income stream, but the solid foundation that allows you to face adversity. A financial reserve prevents you from collapsing during crises, from panicking when you suddenly lose your job, from being terrified of unexpected medical expenses. This very security is what allows you to hold your head high, focusing on building the future instead of endlessly patching up the present. Another value money brings, when understood correctly, is the ability to expand influence. The 1% do not see money merely as a means for personal enjoyment. They see it as leverage to build legacy. Money allows them to invest in ideas, to launch ventures, to support communities, to change lives. A kind-hearted person without resources finds their goodness limited. But when a kind-hearted person has money, their influence can expand without limit. The important lesson to remember: money is not evil, but how you relate to it can lift you up or drag you down. The wise do not worship money, they use it. The blind do not control money, they are controlled by it. True freedom is not about how much you have, but about how much you can master and how you use it to serve your purpose. The 1% do not get trapped in the cycle of spending just to prove themselves. They do not use money for show or to seek recognition. For them, money is a strategic tool. They allocate it to things that create long-term value: education, health, quality relationships, and income-generating assets, because they clearly understand. Spending to be admired only brings illusion, while wise investment brings true freedom. The difference between freedom and bondage also lies in how you define financial success. Those who chase material things see possession as the final goal. But those who understand know that success is when money becomes the support for a meaningful life. Freedom comes when you are no longer dominated by daily financial worries. So your mind and energy can focus on bigger things: creating, contributing, loving, and enjoying. Sadly, many still look at money with suspicion. They believe that to live purely means to stay away from it, that financial desire is greed, but poverty has never been proof of virtue. Poverty only further limits people, sometimes even forcing them to sacrifice their highest principles just to survive. True freedom can only be attained when you have enough resources to choose to uphold your principles without being cornered by life. Money, when understood correctly, is energy. It moves in the direction of value. When you create value, money flows to you. When you waste value, money leaves you. The elite do not chase money. They focus on building value so that money flows toward them naturally. Because of this, they are not consumed by obsession, yet still achieve sustainable wealth. Look directly at the truth. Money is neither bad nor good. It is a mirror reflecting the nature of the one who holds it. If you are compassionate, money allows you to multiply that compassion. If you lack wisdom, money only makes that lack clearer. That is why instead of judging money, focus on training yourself to be mature enough to master it. Only then will money become the tool that frees you from limitations and opens the door to a life of freedom and fulfillment. The crowd always creates a sense of safety. When you see thousands of people moving in the same direction, it is easy to believe that must be the right path. But the harsh truth is that the majority often choose short-term comfort over long-term value. They choose safety over challenge, familiarity over novelty, consensus over independent thought. And because of that, most live in a state where they never truly reach their full potential. Those in the 1% recognize this very early. They understand that if they follow the path everyone else is on, they will only receive the results everyone else has. And since the majority have not achieved the life they desire, blending into the crowd means self-limitation. Therefore, instead of merging in to be accepted, they choose to step out to be free. Rising above the crowd is not an act of arrogance, but a wise decision. It takes courage to say no when the majority say yes, and to nod when most still hesitate. The 1% know that truth often lies outside what is widely accepted. They question common beliefs, dissect popular opinions, and are unafraid to reject what does not bring results. A clear example is how the crowd deals with risk. They often avoid it because in their eyes, risk equals loss. But those who think beyond the crowd understand that the real risk lies in not stepping outside the comfort zone. For them, the price of false safety is the loss of growth and breakthrough. They see risk as the entry fee for an extraordinary life. The crowd also tends to chase recognition. They spend years living to please others, to earn praise, to avoid criticism, but the elite know that recognition is a reward, not the goal. They do not seek approving looks, but seek correctness in action. When you dare to stand firm in your belief, you do not need the applause of the crowd to prove your value. Thinking beyond the crowd also means daring to take full responsibility for your own path. When there is no one left to lean on, every mistake and every choice belongs to you. This is frightening to most people because they are used to blaming circumstances, society, or others. The 1% are different. They see personal responsibility as ultimate power. When you accept that the results of your life are entirely of your own making, you no longer have any reason to stand still. The crowd is driven by collective emotion. When the market is euphoric, they rush into blind investment. When the market panics, they flee in fear. Those who think beyond the crowd remain calm. They do not let the crowd's fear and greed sweep them away. They analyze, observe, and make decisions based on data, strategy, and consistency. This difference is what allows them to turn chaos into opportunity. Going against the crowd does not mean opposing everything, but rather pausing to ask, does this popular choice really lead to the best outcome? When you dare to ask that question, you have already stepped out of the invisible control of the majority, and when you dare to act according to your own answer, you have become free. That freedom is not something everyone can bear, because thinking beyond the crowd often means you will sometimes be alone. There will be days you are doubted, mocked, even opposed. But remember, every pioneer was once seen as eccentric. Only when results appeared did the world recognize their correctness. The 1% accept being ahead of recognition, because they know that true value does not need anyone's permission to exist. Thinking beyond the crowd is also a journey of persistence, because if you are only different for a moment, you will soon be pulled back to the starting line. The crowd has invisible power. It pulls, it persuades, it makes you doubt yourself. That is why those who think beyond the crowd must train their resolve to hold firm, even when results are not yet visible. The key is this: you were not born to dissolve. You were born to leave a mark. If you spend your life trying to be like everyone else, you lose the chance to become yourself. Thinking beyond the crowd does not mean rejecting everything, but skillfully filtering, keeping what is right, discarding what only slows you down. In the end, the crowd always seeks comfort, while those who rise above seek growth. One side chooses immediate ease, the other chooses long-term results. And that difference in choice creates the enormous gap in ultimate achievement. The crowd will always exist, and you can always blend in if you wish. But if you truly desire a life of freedom and fulfillment, you must dare to rise above. Not to prove you are better, but to remain faithful to the potential you already possess. People often grow up within patterns, waiting for their parents' approval, waiting for teachers' consent, waiting for their boss's authorization, waiting for society's recognition. Gradually, they form the habit of living dependent on others' permission. When they want to do something, their first question is not, am I capable enough, but will others allow me? This very habit has caused countless people to live their entire lives without ever stepping onto the path they truly desired. The 1% see this truth clearly, and they choose a different path. They grant themselves permission. They do not wait for doors to be opened. They build their own doors. They do not sit waiting for someone to hand them an opportunity. They turn their effort into opportunity. They do not seek legitimacy from the crowd, because they understand that the most important approval must come from within. Granting yourself permission does not mean acting recklessly or opposing everything. It means you stop handing over the right to decide your life to others. It means you stop waiting for someone to call your name. Stop hoping someone will give you a chance. Stop waiting for someone to recognize your value. When you are brave enough to stand up and say, I choose this path because I believe in it, you have granted yourself permission. One of the common mistakes of the crowd is believing that their value is only proven when acknowledged by others. They work hard, hoping their boss notices. They live kindly, hoping society praises them. They pursue passion, but only dare to reveal it if there is applause. But those who truly break through understand that recognition is an outcome, not a condition. When you give yourself permission to take a step forward, all external recognition becomes a reward, not a foundation. Observe the most successful people. None of them waited. They did not wait for the perfect timing, nor did they wait for approval from their surroundings. Steve Jobs did not wait for recognition before creating Apple. Elon Musk did not wait for consensus before launching into aerospace. They stepped forward with confidence because they understood that waiting for permission means burying vision. Granting yourself permission also means accepting full responsibility. When you no longer blame others, you finally gain the strength to control results. Those who live dependently always make excuses. I can't because my boss won't allow it. I don't dare because my family doesn't support me. Those who grant themselves permission say, I will do it, and I will take responsibility for the outcome. This very difference turns them from passive to proactive, from victim to creator. The mindset of self-permission also forces you to overcome the fear of judgment, because when you dare to act without approval, you will inevitably face criticism, doubt, even ridicule. But remember, every new idea was once opposed. Every bold journey was once called insane. Those who go first accept skeptical looks because they know the final result will be the strongest answer. An interesting thing is that when you dare to grant yourself permission, you begin to create a special kind of energy. That energy naturally draws people's attention, respect, and even their willingness to follow you. In a world where most people wait to be led, those who stand up on their own become anchors for others. This very strength has turned many individuals into leaders not because they were given authority, but because they first dared to give authority to themselves. It must also be emphasized that granting yourself permission is not irresponsibility. It does not mean doing whatever you want out of impulse. On the contrary, it requires wisdom to distinguish between true aspiration and mere whim. When you know exactly what you want, understand why it matters, and are willing to pay the price for it, that is when you are mature enough to grant yourself the right to act. One of the clearest proofs of this power is how the 1% deal with failure. When they fall, they do not blame others, saying, "They didn't support me," or "I wasn't given a chance." They remind themselves, "I chose, I take responsibility, and I will rise again." With this mindset, they never remain stuck in the role of a victim, but quickly turn failure into a lesson. Granting yourself permission is the shift from dependency to autonomy. It is the moment you realize no one holds the key to your life's door but you. You do not need permission to live true to your potential. You do not need to wait for approval. Every day, you have the right to ask yourself, "What do I want? What will I do to move forward?" And then you act. The greatest danger is not failing after choosing your own path, but living a lifetime of regret for never daring to choose. Permission from others may or may not come, but time will never return. Every day you wait is a day you lose the chance to write your story. Remember this, the greatest power you have lies in no one's hands but your own. When you grant yourself permission, you step out of the shadows of dependency, break free from the chains of waiting, and begin living a life of your own creation. That is the true foundation of freedom, success, and dignity. No school can teach you as thoroughly as failure. Books may provide knowledge, advice may offer direction, but only failure forces you to confront your true limits. It is the clearest mirror without embellishment, without disguise, showing you exactly where your weaknesses lie, where the gaps remain, and what truths you have been avoiding. Most people, however, grow up believing failure is something to be avoided. They fear it, they feel ashamed of it, they think failure equals inferiority. As a result, they avoid trying new things, retreat at the first sign of difficulty, and choose the least risky path to preserve a safe image. Yet this very attitude traps them in mediocrity. The person who never fails is also the person who has never truly dared to engage. The 1% hold a completely different perspective. To them, failure is not an ending, but the most vivid curriculum for growth. They enter challenges with the mindset, "What will I learn from this fall?" That very thinking transforms wounds into lessons, mistakes into experience, and setbacks into the foundation for resilience. Failure teaches humility. It reminds you that no matter how intelligent you are, you still have blind spots. No matter how strong, you still have moments of weakness. When you fall, you realize you are not invincible. And from that awareness comes the ability to listen, adjust, and absorb. The arrogant see failure as humiliation. The wise see failure as an opportunity to lower the ego and move further ahead. Failure also teaches the power of persistence. No great success ever comes on the first attempt. Every invention, every company, every masterpiece has passed through countless failed attempts. Edison once said, "I have not failed 10,000 times, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." That is precisely how the elite approach failure, as data, not destiny. Failure is also a lesson in responsibility. When you stumble, you have two choices: blame circumstances or look directly at yourself. Most people choose the first, gathering excuses to comfort their pride. The 1% choose the second, analyzing causes, admitting mistakes, taking responsibility, and making corrections. This honesty accelerates their growth, making them stronger and more trustworthy. Another value failure brings is the ability to manage emotions. When everything collapses, negative feelings overwhelm. Anger, despair, insecurity. If you let those emotions consume you, you will stop. But if you learn to observe them, to separate them from your actions, you will find the calm necessary to rise again. The elite master this. They are disappointed but not broken. They hurt but do not collapse. Failure is also the truest measure of desire. When things get hard, only those who truly hunger will continue. Shortcut seekers give up, but the truly driven see failure as an indispensable part of the road to success. Failure filters out those who merely dream from those willing to pay the price to make dreams real. You can see failure as a test. It asks, are you truly serious about this goal? Will you stay committed when results are not yet here? Do you have the patience to learn again, to try again, and to do better? Your answers determine whether you belong to the ordinary majority or the rare elite. The most important thing to remember, failure does not define who you are. It only reflects a moment in your journey, not your entire fate, but how you respond to failure defines you. Do you choose to rise or remain down? Do you choose to learn or to pity yourself? Do you choose to move forward or to settle? The 1% treat failure like a harsh coach. It is never easy, never gentle, but that very harshness builds mental muscle. One fall makes you sharper. Many falls make you tougher. And countless falls make you strong enough to achieve what the crowd only dares to dream. Remember, success does not come from avoiding failure, but from accumulating lessons after every failure. Those who never fall lack the experience to stand firm when storms strike. Those who have fallen many times hold within them a living database to handle any situation. That is the advantage only failure provides. Failure is not the enemy, but an uncomfortable ally. A clear goal, specific steps, and commitment. When you learn something new, immediately attach it to a goal. What do I apply this to achieve? Then define the first small step. What will I do within the next 24 hours? Finally, maintain commitment, no matter how small, to build momentum. It does not need to be grand, only specific, because even a small action pulls you out of the comfort zone and puts you into the current of progress. Finally, remember this. No one remembers you for what you know, but for what you do. The world does not pay you for knowledge. It pays you for the value created from that knowledge. You do not need to know everything. You only need to dare to act on what you already know. Imperfect action always gives more data than a plan that never leaves paper. Failure through action teaches you faster than the safety of theory. Another reason action matters more than knowledge is because action creates momentum. You may know countless things, but only when you begin do you generate the energy to keep going. The more you act, the more small results you see, and those small results fuel greater motivation. This is the positive cycle that those who only read and listen will never experience. Knowledge must also be turned into habit, not just scattered events. The 1% do not learn to satisfy curiosity. They learn to change lifestyle. If they learn time management, they apply it immediately to their daily schedule. If they learn a financial strategy, they start experimenting with small amounts. Every piece of knowledge is tied to a concrete behavior, and those behaviors create long-term results. An uncomfortable truth. Many people turn to knowledge not to change, but to delay. They enjoy the feeling of learning because it gives them the illusion of progress, while in reality, they remain stagnant. The wise recognize the danger in this and cut it off immediately. They do not learn for comfort, they learn for action. To transform knowledge into action, 3 elements are required. It never praises you, but it always teaches you. It does not reward you instantly, but it gives you the solid foundation to one day stand on the podium of triumph. And only those wise enough to see failure as a teacher rather than a sentence are the ones who go the farthest. When you understand this, you will no longer fear failure. You will dare to try more, dare to risk more, dare to go further. Because you know, even if the outcome is not what you hoped, the value you gain remains immense. Failure is only tuition, and that cost is always cheaper than a lifetime of regret for never daring to try. The world today has never lacked information. Books, courses, videos, podcasts, every piece of knowledge is only a screen tap away. Yet the paradox is that the more people gain access to knowledge, the fewer truly change their lives. The reason is not that they do not know, but that they do not act. Knowledge by itself is only potential. Action is the key that turns potential into results. The 1% understand that the most dangerous gap is not the gap between rich and poor, but the gap between knowing and doing. The majority stop at accumulating information, finding comfort in reading more, learning more, listening more. They believe that the more they know, the closer they are to success. But in reality, knowledge unpracticed is nothing more than a locked treasure chest that provides no real value. You can read 10 books on entrepreneurship, but if you never dare to start even a small project, every page remains just memory. You can memorize all the principles of health, But if you do not exercise and change your eating habits, your body will remain stagnant. You can listen to hundreds of motivational speeches, but if tomorrow you still wake up late and procrastinate, your life will not change. The 1% do not chase knowledge like collectors. They turn knowledge into action. For them, every new piece of knowledge must answer one question: what will I do differently after learning this? If there is no clear answer, they will not waste their time. They are not seduced by the volume of information, they focus on its application value. Another difference is that they do not wait to know it all before acting. The majority often fall into the trap called endless preparation. They think they need to study more, research more, prepare more before starting. But the truth is, you will never be completely ready. The elite choose to begin as soon as they know enough to act, and they continue learning on the real journey. It is collision with reality that provides lessons books cannot replace. Knowledge only has power when paired with experience. A page of a book may inspire you, but only action engraves the lesson in your mind. When you try, fail, adjust, and repeat, you turn knowledge into skill. And skill is what builds life, not information. The 1% also see mistakes differently when applying knowledge. The majority fear trying because they worry about doing it wrong. But they understand that doing it wrong is still better than doing nothing. This is how knowledge gradually turns into tangible results. The power of action also lies in the fact that it makes a visible difference. Knowledge remains in your head, but action touches the real world. A book you read will only change you, but an action you take can change you and those around you. When you apply, you create influence, and that influence reinforces your belief in the value of action. The 1% never measure themselves by the amount of knowledge they possess, but by the results they produce from that knowledge. They do not ask, "How much have I read?" They ask, "What have I done differently because of what I read?" This measure keeps them focused, not drifting in the ocean of information, but moving straight toward results. The crucial point is to train yourself in the reflex: learn one, do one. Each time you take in knowledge, ask yourself, what is the smallest action I can take right now?